Hi, today I'm going to talk about vocabulary alternates and show how to use them. This is a new feature that we've added. So the purpose is to have an option to express something using a complex term and to also have a simpler version. Now, there are ways that we can introduce complex terms, like I've shared before, like using the complex concepts button. If we click on that and click on wind, we can pair with wind a more complex term. But sometimes there are things that can be expressed one way with a complex term and have to be expressed another way with simpler terms. Here's the text that we're looking at. This comes from 1 Kings chapter 19. And this is using the simpler terms to express what's going on. Here's the phase one up here at the top. After the wind stopped blowing, the ground began to shake, but Yahweh was not in this event. So what it's talking about is an earthquake. You can see here after the wind blow, and if you look at the features, if you look at the fourth feature, when you hover the mouse, it says cessative. So that's how you get stopped blowing. And then here for shake, if you hover the mouse over that, the fourth feature is inceptive. So it began to shake. So this has the correct semantic representation. And down here we can see after the wind stopped blowing, the ground started shaking. But Yahweh was not in this event. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently using the vocabulary alternates. So what I'm going to do is down at the bottom, if you look in the first row of buttons, just to the right of complex concepts, there's a little button that has a copy symbol, 2 little pages. So I clicked on that. And now I'm going to use the Control key to select a section of the semantic representation. So I click on the first part of this first sentence, and then still holding down the Control key, I'm going to click on the end bracket of that sentence. So now you see it's all blue, so it's ready to copy. And so if I click on the first element here of that sentence, it will insert a copy of that sentence before the copied sentence. Okay, so now I'm going to change this first sentence and use a new word, earthquake, which I've introduced. And so I'm going to replace word. That's a button down in the bottom right down here. And click on ground. Now I'm going to put in earthquake. And press enter. And up comes earthquake. If you hadn't entered this already, it would, when you do analysis from the earthquake in the TBTAEs, it would cue you to add this word. So now here, I just clicked on features. Oh, okay, this shows something. When I changed this word to earthquake, it changed both occurrences. So in the sentence that I didn't want to change, that's often a convenient thing, but it wasn't convenient here. So I'm going to click on an empty space in the thing list, click on the second earthquake, which I wanted to be ground. And now for that one, I'm going to do replace word and change it back to ground. Okay, so because those had the same thing list, in other words, they were supposed to be the same thing, when I changed to earthquake here, it changed here. And I'm going to change the features of these. So for the ground, it's currently marked as routine, which is the default participant tracking, but I'm going to mark it as frame inferable. because we figure the ground, we know what it is, it's the ground under us. But for here, I want an earthquake. So when I click on this, I'm going to use first mention. First mention is what gives you the determiner A, so a wind and an earthquake. It's the first mention of this earthquake. And now I want to change the verb. Now, because the verb isn't a thing, we don't have to worry about if I change this one, it will change the second one. So I'm going to click on replace word, and in this first sentence, I'm going to use a form of to be, and then I drop down and I want existential. So it comes out, there was an earthquake. You can see it says the example is there are lions in Africa. So I change it to that form of to be, and it's discourse, and that's fine. Okay, so that should be correct for that first sentence. And then for the second sentence, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on copy text, which is down at the bottom right, just to the right of complex concepts. I'm going to hold down the control key, click on the left part of that sentence, the right part, and now I'm going to click on the first part, and that inserts a copy of that sentence. But Yahweh was not in, but now here, so here I've learned, okay? So if I replace event, it's going to replace both occurrence of event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the thing list on an empty space, and I'm going to click on that second event. So now I have two events, and now for the first sentence with event, I'm going to click on replace word and replace that. And again, I want earthquake. But there's a better way to do this. I should have thought of this. So what I really want to do is, no, I'm not sure if I need to do that or not. Let's see what happens if I click, no, yeah, I'm pretty sure I need to replace the word. Okay, so replace the word earthquake. Okay. But now, this is fine. I could have left it, I could leave the thing index just as it is, and that's fine. Okay, except that I have two versions of earthquake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the thing list, and it will recreate the thing list. So now I don't have two versions of earthquake. It's all the same earthquake. Okay, so now we have, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. This one should be, could be that earthquake. Was not in that earthquake. I think I'm going to change the feature. Right now it's, if you drag the mouse over it, you'll see the proximity is contextually near with focus. So that will come out this earthquake. I'm going to change it to that. That's partly just a preference. The other one is the wind started to shake, but Yahweh was not in this wind. I'll leave that. Okay, so if we click now on generate, we're going to get 4 sentences. And I should fix up the phase 1, by the way, with these new sentences. I may do that, or I might not. I think I'll just tell you what I would do. So So at this point it says, after the wind stopped blowing, there was an earthquake. Then this is the alternate sentence. After the wind stopped blowing, the ground started shaking. See, so we can't just pair another word with earthquake. We have to write it a different way. But Yahweh was not in that earthquake, or, but he was not in this event. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to select features and, oh, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to move words. You'll see why I do this in a minute. Okay, and I'm going to move the third sentence, but Yahweh was not in that earthquake. So I'm going to hold down the control key with replace words, click on the first part of the sentence, click on the last part. And now I'm going to move it, I'm going to click on the beginning of the second sentence so it inserts it before that. So now we have the parts with earthquake are at the beginning in the first two sentences, and the parts without the earthquake are in the last two sentences. Just to be safe, I'm going to click on Save Analysis. Didn't need to do that. Okay, now I'm going to make this what we call a vocabulary alternate. So I'm going to click on Features, and I'm going to click on the beginning of the first sentence. And if you scroll way over, you see Vocabulary Alternate, Single Sentence Complex Vocabulary Alternate. Well, we have more than one sentence. Okay, first sentence complex alternate. That's what I want. I'm going to click on that. For the second sentence, I'm going to click on last sentence complex vocabulary alternate. Then for the third sentence, I'm going to click on first sentence simple vocabulary alternate. If it was only one sentence, I'd click on single sentence. If there are three sentences, the second one would be coordinate and the third one would be last. And then for the last sentence, simple vocabulary alternate. Okay, now I'm going to generate, and let's see what happens. Now it gives us a warning. The sentences between the red boundaries are marked as complex vocabulary alternates, but these sentences do not contain a semantically complex concept, semantic level of 3. Although this is loud, it is unusual. Do you want to correct this situation? Now I'm going to say no. Now, the reason is because I just introduced this word, and because I'm not Todd, I can't change the complexity level to numeral 3 like it should be. So that should be the complexity level of earthquake should be numeral 3. But when I add a new word, it shows up as red in the ontology, and I can't change the semantic level. So I'm just going to say no. And let it go ahead and generate. Now what it's going to do is if it has that word in the ontology, it will use the complex version. And that's what it did here. So now we have the generation. After the wind stopped blowing, there was an earthquake, but Yahweh was not in that earthquake. Now, eventually, when we can change the semantic level to numeral 3 and select the words in the audience, then for the unchurched children audience, you would get the simpler version. After the wind stopped blowing, the ground began to shake. After the wind stopped blowing, the ground began to shake, but Yahweh was not in that event. But at this time, we can't tell it that we are not using that word because we can't change the semantic level. So, but you get the idea here that with the vocabulary alternate, if it has that word available, it will use it. And if it doesn't, it will use the simpler version. Okay, I have to do something else right now. So I am going to stop Thank you for listening. I should also go back and edit text and add the more complex version before this.